Welcome to Real Talk with Mark West, a podcast about owning your shit and playing through life.
I do's what I want.
I do's what I want. I do's what I want. If people would just accept that, we could get along. Come to me if you want to. I ain't scared. Shit, I bike in Chicago. I feel like I'm Neo in the Matrix, but I suck at it. I'm dodging right into the bullets, you know?
This is good therapy.
I'm your host, Mark West. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk with Mark West, where we are having better conversations with ourselves so we can have better conversations with others. But we always make sure to have some fun along the way. I'm Mark West, and thank you for joining me today. I'm sorry about last week. I want to start with that. I needed more time to write and produce the episode I wanted, and that your time and attention deserves. I am learning a lot about myself through this podcast, therapy, and personal reflection, and as I get better acquainted with all parts of myself, I'm trying to change my opinions on things about me that I've deemed bad or incorrect, recognizing that these ideas were imposed and aren't true. I'm trying to shed my coping mechanisms and live as my true self. And as I do, I'm finding out so much about myself. Well, underneath my coping mechanisms, I recently found my ADHD, something I didn't know I carried. So, I've been having to revisit ideas about myself and who I am and start shining compassion onto them. I'm not lazy, irresponsible, unorganized, unfocused, a quitter, a procrastinator, all these negative labels that live in my mind. I'm simply me. Someone who needs a structure to operate in, since my thinking is so unstructured. I'm also revisiting the frequency of my podcast and considering a twice-a-month schedule to be nicer to myself and the extra focus and attention my dream requires. I'll keep you posted on my final decision, but that will be the move for this month. I want to take the time right now to say thank you all so much for your support, your patience, and most importantly, your understanding this whole journey with my show. And I'm very, very, very excited for all the great content and events I have planned for you. For today, let's continue with our series, Mark West's Art of Living, Creating Your Own Happiness.
Mark, how can you find happiness when there's so much stress on to succeed? I was watching the news yesterday, and a Minnesota Twins player was just signed on, and they're going to be paid $35 million a year. Okay, let that sink in for a bit. How can you find happiness when happiness has taken on a level for some people of attaining that kind of notoriety or a Kardashian notoriety or this level of importance that we've given these people, which is not merited as far as I'm concerned. It's all material. It's funny because I just completed an art course for seniors. It was a print course. It was 8 weeks. And every week, the teacher before the class would ask us a question. In this last class, she asked, what makes you happy? And there were, I think there was 12 people in the room. And she asked every person, and they did not mention any kind of a material thing. It was all like being with my grandkids, walking in the woods, taking a boat ride in a lake. It was all these experiences that had nothing to do with ownership of a material thing.
When I went through my first period of depression, it wasn't sadness or happiness. It was a nothingness. And that was the most difficult part. That quest for feeling. Noticing those things that used to fill me no longer satisfy me anymore. In fact, they're starting to feel like a chore. This episode today is taking us to a place I was trying to get to slowly. I was trying to spoon feed my thoughts and ideas and take some baby steps to get to the realization that I've been trying to share, but the conversation has gotten here organically, so I'm going to take the note and roll with the punches. My path towards happiness started in my early 20s when I was a very devout Christian. My identity was firmly rooted in my faith, and there was no question about who I was and what I believed in. I'm starting there and saying that because it leads me to my next thought point and concern regarding the state of our minds. We have unconsciously become steeped in dualism. Instead of building bridges, we've begun building walls in our own minds. In a non-binary world, we've built a list of binaries separated by the word or. We need to have a discussion about how happiness is being packaged by not just the wellness industry, but social media, politics, Hollywood, education, religion, your neighbor on the corner, our culture as a whole, pushing us to airbrush out the bad stuff. But it's the bad stuff, the really difficult stuff, that teaches us what life and happiness is. I used to think happiness was in success, status, and acceptance. When people stop pestering me about who I am and how I live my life, I'll be happy. Or, when I achieve this, I'll be happy. I started my own company here in Chicago doing what I love, and I still found it hard to be happy. When your mind is spiraling and losing control, don't use your mind to calm it down. Having philosophical or spiritual conversations are difficult today because we live in a world of binaries and absolutes. This or that, spirituality or reason, science or mysticism, godly or ungodly, illusion or reality, good or bad, guilty or not guilty, left or right, gay or straight, red or blue, black or white, yin or yang. We live in a world that has no time for philosophy and spirituality, and now we don't trust science. We're too smart for all that. So, I'm not confused about the state of the world today. We are lost in the age of free thinking. We're wandering through life with no guideposts. We're taking a trip without a map. The word science literally means thought. So how is that any different from philosophy, which means wisdom? Both were made by human thinking, and if anything, don't you at least want to be wise? What we fail to realize, as shown throughout history, dualism is the path toward fundamentalism and fascism. When you start separating things that are meant to be together, it is never this or that. There is a reason the Jedi say only a Sith Lord deals in absolutes, because it literally is the path toward persecution and oppression in the name of some twisted good cause. What we need today, more than anything, is to recognize, appreciate, and revel in the and, yin and yang. Because when we do that, we start to see the interconnectedness of everything, and once we do, we find in that moment exactly what we've all been looking for. Connection, contentment, an end to that empty longing. We find our true selves. Wisdom, philosophy, spirituality are key parts of learning yourself and understanding your place here. Its lessons are from people who have already done it. Why wouldn't I listen to them? It would be unscholarly, unscientific not to. And they say, a sound spiritual practice that works for you is key to a happy life. But what does that look like in a 21st century world? Because I will do anything for love, but I won't join a monastery. Today, I'm talking to one of my childhood educators and mentors, Mary Runnestead. She joined me via video call from her home in Minnesota to catch up on life and talk about our experiences growing up in Rockford, Illinois, about 90 miles west of Chicago. We weren't born into the same generation, though, so we grew up during different times. Every visible thing about us is different. How we identify, who we love, how we spend Sunday morning. But I wanted to hear from her because when embarking on a journey, you don't get directions from someone who's never left the house. Rumi said that about 1,000 years ago. The invisible journey we are all on is the same. And I've always known Mrs. Runnestead to be genuine, open-minded, and safe. That's a word that's thrown around a lot, and I start to roll my eyes when I hear it because we don't really know what we mean when we say safe. But what I mean is, I've always seen her as someone who did her best to minimize suffering, and she did that by simply not projecting her own onto other people. She found better, healthier ways to cope. And that's what I want, that invisible thing that seemingly makes certain people more capable. And says, I can do it too. I just have to figure it out. And if you did, so can I. I just need directions. As opposed to releasing this personalized brand of happiness that everyone is on nowadays, this wellness industry kick, I'm on a personal mission. I'm like, I believe in sustainable happiness. There's this idea that, oh yeah, I know I like to be happy, but I understand that I don't deserve to be happy all the time. Call me arrogant, call me selfish, but I'm like, no, I want to be happy all the time. I believe it's possible. I know people and have read about people who were happy all the time. This journey isn't for me to be preaching to anybody about this is how you're supposed to live your life. It's just me trying to take a walk myself, understanding that my mental drama is shared. Right. Basically, the root of my suffering is just my memory and my imagination. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to create happier memories so I can have better imaginings.
I get it.
Like I said, you're one of those people who are able to be a calm, who just can even bring calm to a situation.
I appreciate that because internally, you know the analogy of the duck on the water, where they look very calm on the surface, but then underneath their feet are going like this. That's kind of been my personality and my essence through the years. It's funny because, I got back onto Facebook. I haven't been on Facebook for over a year after the Capitol riot because I was just so upset with everything going on Facebook, and the negativity and the people that were posting untruths. And I wouldn't come at them, but I would respond by posting something that was just clarifying what the truth was for what they were saying. But they wouldn't accept that. It was just too much negativity, so I did have to drop out. But I have been going back on, maybe you've seen the last few days, with just beautiful songs that I love and some of the history behind some of the songs and who sang them and who wrote them, and just to bring some kind of a beauty to the posts in Facebook. So this morning I was thinking about one that I'm going to be posting pretty soon by Jimmy Ruffin. It's a song that goes back to 1966. Now, Jimmy is a brother of David Ruffin, who was the lead singer of The Temptations.
Okay.
And the song that I loved was called What Becomes of a Broken Hearted.
Oh, yes.
Very popular
I know that one.
Motown song. I just love it. And in the song, it says, happiness is just an illusion, full of sadness and confusion. And I was thinking about how topical that was for our conversation today, and how I don't know if I'm really trying to achieve happiness in life, but maybe the word best is contentment, because you're never going to be able to sustain continual happiness, but there are going to be moments of contentment. Some people think that once I get over this hurdle, I'm going to be happy. Well, it never comes. You have to learn how to accept that, and how that it's just one problem-solving thing after another, and you just can't internalize the negativity and the drama and the pain behind that to sustain you. You just have to think, okay, it's just another hurdle I have to get over. So I think that was my way of looking at happiness. It's more of finding those moments of contentment.
That's a lot of what I've been hearing from people, and it reminds me of this quote I heard recently from Blaise Pascal that said, always carry something beautiful in your mind.
Absolutely. And it's difficult because, I just got done watching the news, and the Ukrainian situation, North Korean situation, there's just so many things that bring you down, and with all that permeating the atmosphere all the time, it's hard to sustain some happiness. but we marshal on because you can't let that overcome your whole essence. To tell you a little bit of my background of unhappiness, I grew up in a family where there was a lot of nagging, fighting, some physical violence. And I had to endure that for a long time and try to cope with that and try and find happiness. It also grew into a hoarding situation. I couldn't have kids over to play. I couldn't entertain. It was a very shameful thing, a very hurtful thing, a very painful time in my life was growing up. And so you try to figure out how can you find happiness in that environment. Fortunately, my mom had me enrolled in ballet class, and I found that the arts was really an outlet for me. That's how I was able to find my happiness and my place of contentment and calm. And I'm so grateful for those experiences. I took ballet for 15 years. It was such a balm for me to try and escape that oppressive negativity that I was growing up with. I think when people get involved in something like that, or in nature, it's a soul subject where you find your happiness. I certainly needed it, and I promote that for so many other people that are dealing with that kind of trauma in their lives.
How do we strive? Because that's one thing that, of course, a lot of us can fall into this habit of striving to be happy. Because I will admit, unhappiness is something I knew a lot as a child also. And so I've realized, like, since the pandemic, when everything slowed down, I found out how fast I was going, and I asked myself why. And I'm like, I'm striving to be happy. I'm chasing happiness. It was one of those things I have to reverse the environment that I was raised in. But I ended up recreating that environment for myself and other people. You know? Oh,
okay. I see. Mm-hmm.
So how do we get out of this trap, this idea? Because the world has gotten very serious, and it doesn't feel okay to take that time to be content. How do we get out of that trap, especially today?
It's too much effort to keep trying for it. You just have to relax into it. It's interesting because one of the factors that really influenced me negatively was my religious upbringing. It's funny because I've been craving. We're in a new neighborhood, a new city that we just moved in September, so we have no sense of community. And we've been looking for that, and I've stayed away from churches because I've been burned. But I was looking into a fairly liberal United Church of Christ church that's not far from us, and so we went there Sunday. And it was such a liberating experience because his message was about how you don't take the Bible stories seriously. It's where people were experiencing life at a certain place in time and trying to describe God and trying to describe their lives. And we can learn from it, but we can't take it literally. And that was such a breath of fresh air for me because I grew up in an environment where it was very rigid. It was Lutheran, formerly Swedish Lutheran church. It was very rigid, and this is what you believed, and God is the only way, and our religion is the only way. And it didn't open my mind up to all the different possibilities of experiencing the divine. And that was a really negative impact on me. And it's funny because the pastor at the service referred to a book of Greek myths, and it happened to be the very book of Greek myths that I read when I was a child, and how it got me to thinking, okay, there's other creation stories, there's other ways that people interpreted God, there's other ways besides the Christian one idea that explain our universe. And why is my Lutheran faith the good one, the only one, the pure one? And it's not. I'm coming from I really think I myself as agnostic up until this point, but I think that there is a divine thread through everything that we need to tap into. I don't care how you define it, whether it's whatever. If you're not tapping into that divine or feeling it you're within you, you're not in community with the universe. So I just thought I'd share that experience I had last week because it really was enlightening to my growth. Even though I'm almost 68 years old, it was integral to my growth.
Those are questions and conversations I've been having myself, and I've had to have them personally just because even if you say spirituality, people automatically jump to religion. It's such a heated conversation.
Right. And it doesn't you don't have to have subscribed to a certain religion to be a spiritual person. I totally am on board with that. It's just, but I think in order to be whole, you really do have to be connected to there's some kind of power out there. Maybe it's not God, but I think there's some kind of power out there that we tap into that connects us as a people. And it really does make you feel whole, I think.
Yes, I was stuck in individualism. Like, as I was having this conversation, I'd completely destroyed God. I'm like, I'm out here on my own.
Right.
Yeah, there's a little feudal nature.
Absolutely.
Like, you really are like, then why am I doing any of this? Like,
Right.
Why be here?
What's the purpose?
Yes. Well, I heard this quote by a German philosopher, Meister Eckhart. And I would say it in German. It's super easy to say in German, but I haven't practiced, so I'm not going to. But it literally said, God becomes and God unbecomes. And so it's saying the closer you get to God, the more intimate you become with God, the less it becomes God. Once I let go of that truth looks like this, truth is in this direction, I started finding God everywhere. I'm like, oh, I see what we're talking about now. We're just talking about that thing that connects us.
That thing. And it's not this man up in the heavens. It's so much more basic than that. It's about community. It's about loving people. It's not these religions that separate us and that create barriers. We have to find our commonality. And religion often is an obstacle to that. Are we talking about happiness?
We are talking about happiness. It is, but a lot of I believe a spiritual nature, having a spiritual side, is a path to happiness.
Right.
But I guess we are drawing that line in the sand and saying there is a distinct difference that hasn't been pushed between this idea of dogmatic religion and self-reflective, spirituality.
Right. And mindfulness is huge. I can see, particularly in the world the way it is today, with how fast-paced it is, and all the technology and the layers and the cacophony, and it's very hard to be mindful. And that's where the spiritual is. You have to be mindful every moment. Every conversation you have with someone, it's about them, it's not about you. Every walk through the woods, it's about the woods, it's not about you. You have to really be in the present, really embrace it, really make it a quilt around you. I mean, you can't be some other places at some other time. It's funny because I don't know if you know what an empath is, but I'm an empath. And I'm not sure why I'm bringing that up, but it's why sometimes I can't feel really happy because I know the nuances of everything going around me, all the pain, all the strife, all the joy, and it kind of can become kind of an imbalance. But I also think it's a gift.
I struggle with that also. There are times where my world gets too big and I get too overly connected. I have to start making my world a lot smaller. And in those moments, be like, well, right now, though, here's what we can be grateful for. Do you have certain techniques? Because I know one thing that I am going to be getting into, and that one thing that not just every religion says the word meditation. And a lot of people put a certain kind of mysticism to meditation. A lot of people put a certain kind of evilness to it. But at the end of the day, meditation is just awareness.
Absolutely.
And when you sit and close your eyes, you're being aware of different things. But I've found that for me personally, bike riding is perfect meditation because you can't zone out while you're biking, especially in Chicago. You shouldn't zone out while you're biking.
Absolutely.
Plant care, it's like taking time to inspect my plants.
I do that too. I have my succulents. They're my children.
Oh yes, awesome. But yeah.
Can I tell you, I like succulents because you can water them every 2 weeks, and they're good. They're pretty hardy.
Yes.
But yeah, I know. It's those simple routines, particularly if they involve life, like plants, that really help, I think, with your happiness and your contentment. And bike riding, I love bike riding. We live right near a bike path now that goes along the Mississippi River, and we just love it. That's what nature is for. It's for our balm. And I wish more people could realize how much of a balm it can be. It's a very predictable thing. When your world is very unpredictable, the seasons of the forest across the street from us is very predictable. You know that the spring is going to come and the new life is going to come. And it also makes you less important, which is good. I think it's not all about me. It's about the bigger picture, I think, when you experience nature.
Thanks for tuning in. My depression produced a numbness to shield me from the difficult feelings that were deep inside of me. So I lived in denial about who I was and how I was feeling, which allowed it to fester. To keep those negative thoughts and feelings from creeping into my conscious mind, I stayed constantly distracted, obsessed with over-consuming social media, food, movies, video games, alcohol, whatever, anything to help me forget. I was running away from my feelings, so I was running away from myself, externalizing who I was so I didn't have to face who I really was inside. And I only had time for people and things that confirmed this idea I wanted to maintain about who I was. It was only my shame and anger that kept me from examining myself and really being in touch with who I am. Enough people have told me how wrong and off I am. Why keep reminding myself of that fact? Why make myself vulnerable to even more attacks by being myself? But I can't give myself the happy life I deserve if I refuse to live life as myself. In mathematics, the symbols for zero and infinity are borrowed from spirituality. Science cannot quantify zero or infinity because they do not truly exist. There is no number for them. They both represent a certain kind of nothingness. So when they needed symbols for nothingness, they took them from Kriya Yoga, where they're used to represent the flow of life energy. When you are unbalanced and out of sync, it can feel like you are spiraling. Your energies and thoughts and actions are stuck in a loop, a nothingness, like my depression. But when you are in touch with yourself and in sync with life, you move easily through life, able to ebb and flow. Your staunch and rigid idea of self evaporates and dissolves into a certain kind of blissful nothingness. You feel full, content, infinite. I remember vividly the moment when my depression started to lift. It was like the first day after a bad flu, where you're still half dead, but you've never felt more alive, and there's a gratitude towards life. That's how I found myself feeling one day, standing in my kitchen. It was a shock. Simple things held my happiness. But I also realized those things that made me happy did so because of the simple beauty I found in them in the midst of a certain ugliness. Some people might not like me for any other reason than I'm me. Well, I've said it before, but I'll say it nice this time. I don't care if you don't like me, because you don't know me. And you can't know me, not as long as you refuse to know yourself. Because when you do, you'll see that we are the same. So when you hate me, you hate yourself. It is not me or you. It is me and you. That's why I want to make my journey known, because despite how people would have you think and feel, I know I don't go through these things alone. Visible or invisible, I am not just the person you see. I'm also what you don't see. The people, experiences, and lessons that have shaped me. For good and for bad. We are not just living in a material world, and I am not just a material girl. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you got something out of it, please leave a review, follow and subscribe, and of course, share this episode with a friend. It takes just a couple seconds, but the impact and my gratitude are immeasurable, as every little bit helps in growing awareness. To find more episodes, or to talk back to me about your journey, visit heymarkwest.com. There you'll find my social media links, as well as additional resources for support. I'm Mark West, and until next time, don't forget, you are a rock star. You've got this. I'll see you in 2 weeks for Real Talk with Mark West.